Well, it turns out that Bradford hadn't gotten enough of me in his own video earlier today. So, and it is Thursday, so it is his time. So, Bradford, glad to have you on here tonight.
Yeah, looking forward to talking some Tesla.
Yeah, well, I understand you have become a slightly, at least famous as a result of some kind of nonsense that you raised. Did I say nonsense out loud? Some kind of very controversial things that you talked about yesterday. So I think we should dive into that first. Did you say Fortune magazine quoted you?
Yeah, we did a video about that Elon may need to sell some Tesla shares soon to patch a financial hole with X. And a lot of Tesla bulls are really upset with me sharing that. But also, Fortune ended up carrying that story and quoted me directly, naming me in the story and linking to our video.
Nice.
And then Yahoo Finance syndicated that.
Huh?
So yeah, you can call me Sir now.
Sir Bradford. Is that why you've gone from Brad to Bradford? Is so that the Sir would sound really good in front of it?
That's right.
I'm not going to go to Sir Randolph, although you can imagine how good that sounds.
So at issue is revenues in the second quarter. This is according to a New York Times article for X in the US declined by half.
Right.
And that was versus a year ago.
Uh-huh.
And a year ago we were hearing about X that they were at break even or nearing break even, but some other things have changed at X. They're paying creators more than they have. They're not only paying creators for ads, but like it's those payouts have gone up over time. So like you have lower revenues and you're paying more out the door. You might have a little bit of a cash problem. We just think it's something that Tesla investors should be aware of because Elon may need to put some more money into X. X investors may be tapped on the shoulder for that if you're an X investor. Certainly there's other assets that Elon has, like he could sell SpaceX stock to raise some cash. X does have some debt they need to pay for. I don't think they fully paid off their debt. It's at 12% interest rate. It's pretty high. And X has sued one of their biggest customers, which is their advertisers. So they sued a group of the advertisers. Rebellionaire, we happen to advertise on X, so our activity on X has actually increased.
Wow.
And we have this verified org badge, which we're sponsoring a lot of creators on X, and that those number of creators has only increased. So and Matt and I do get a payout from X like any creator does. So
Sure.
like those are our biases, but we are a customer of X. Hopefully they don't sue us. But Randy, tell me, did you ever sue a client or a customer when you were in business?
Well, yeah, I did. Okay, so I'm a law school graduate, and
Uh-huh.
they taught one of the teachers. After 3 years at UCLA, I learned one thing: never sue or be sued. All right, that's the number one thing you want to do as a business owner. I don't care, as a private citizen, whoever you are, never sue or be sued. Now, Elon, for him, it's just another department. It's like, okay, lawyer, go
Yeah.
take care of this. All right. So it's not the same as when you got to get into the nitty gritty and have all the emotional negatives that go along with being in a lawsuit and all that. So no, I think I was involved in two lawsuits that actually involved my company, and I was involved three other times as an expert witness. So that is
Mhm.
my entire 50 plus years in business, 5 times in a court of law. In fact, 2 of those 5, I never made it to a court of law because they were settled before. So the issue
And
here, though,
and we understand why Elon's upset. We
well,
understand why X is suing them.
the issue is
Um,
very clear. This is a cabal. a
Mhm.
cabal of advertisers and the company who was giving them advice as to where they should advertise. And together they made a decision to gang up on X as a method to apparently try to shut it down. That would
Yeah,
be
try and put them out of
how
business,
to put them
which
out of
is
business. So
that's illegal. That's harm.
completely illegal. And so there's every reason for Elon to sue them. And there's lots of advertisers. And there's lots of advertisers that when they start to see what other people are doing on X and seeing what kind of return on investment they get from their advertising, they're going to be like, we don't have a choice. That's how it's like. I can remember how many times my partner would come and say, well, are we going to go to this trade show this year? And we go, oh, I hate to spend the 10 grand. And, we didn't do that well last year at that show and blah, blah, blah. Can we afford not to be at that show? Can we afford not to be in that situation? Can we afford our competition to be in that forum and not us be in that forum? So this was a constant. So yeah, you've got that. Everybody in business has that situation where you don't want your competition to be doing great in an environment and you're not showing up. That can be very detrimental to your business. So I think long term, there's nothing to worry about. I have questions for you though, because I didn't study this and I want to know. Did the New York Times, they had revenue numbers, I saw that 144 million or something, and they said that was half of the previous year. So at the very top, they were doing $1 billion, after they cut out all their employees and said they were roughly breaking even or moving into profits. So if they're now half of that at 500 million a year in sales, depending on what they did with that overhead, whether they continued to cut or how they've decided to deal with it, a $500 million company, I mean, the losses that we might be talking about might be on the order of 100 million a year. I mean, I don't think we're talking about more than that. So if we're talking about 100
So
million
is 120 million shortfall that quarter? We don't know how unusual that
in
is.
sales,
We don't know the volatility, and it was in sales. So basically, $500 million in sales,
per year,
if you annualize it.
right?
So that's a whole, and then now you're paying creators. So we're not talking about subscriptions on X. We're talking about reaching into your pocket and paying creators cash.
Right.
And that's money out the door. We haven't really heard of mass layoffs versus a year ago.
But has the New York Times is claiming they had this inside information about sales. Do they have any inside information about the loss for the quarter?
They did not share that.
Okay, but I'm just asking you, can you imagine on that size of a company, the loss in this particular case being more than 100 million per year?
Yeah, because it's 120 million in one quarter.
No, 120 million was the lowered sales, but just because your sales go down in half doesn't mean your loss is that your financial cash flow loss is the same as your reduction in sales, because there's a margin with regard to those sales. There's other costs that don't apply to those lost sales.
I think the advertising business at X is a very high margin. Like, so the marginal cost for them to add $1 million in advertising is extremely minimal.
All right, let's call it. Okay,
it might be less than $100.
So let's call it. So what would you think? What would you think? $250 million? Do you think that could be the number? They could be losing cash flow out the door, $250 million. Would that be a number that you'd be happy with?
From the drop in advertisers, I think it could be up to a half billion.
$500 million a year in cash loss. Okay, so let's call it that. We'll say it's $500 million a year in lost cash. And let's say that they want to make sure that they solve that for 3 years. They don't want to be, they need to raise $1.5 billion in capital. If Elon sold $1.5 billion worth of Tesla stock, it would be like a nothing burger.
I don't think so. Not the way that Elon sells stock.
Oh, okay.
And there's nobody sitting around with $1.5 billion wanting to give Elon some great deal on the stock. So like, let's say the stock is at 215 a share,
Right.
and Elon wants to sell that day. Jared Birchall advises him to sell that day. That's Elon's financial guy.
Mhm.
There's no one that's going to give him $215 a share on his $1.5 billion. They'll say, okay, we'll buy it at up to a 10% discount, maybe. And you know, people think there's these magic dark pools where there's all this cash ready to buy Tesla at market price. Well, they would just pay market price. They wouldn't just like sit there and wait. Um, so what Elon has tended to do in the past when he sold stock is he's just sold it on the open market.
Yeah. Okay. And so let's say he sells $1.5 billion one day. He just decides, okay, I need 100 and I need 1.5 right now. I'm going to sell it today. That's it. And so he does it. And what do you think, as somebody who's watched this for your whole professional life, what typically happens to a stock when there's a big investor that gets out? Does it revert to the mean because people are willing to pay what the company is worth fundamentally? So it might not revert to the mean that day, but over a week or 2 weeks, it'll revert to the mean because that's what the company was worth.
You might say that, but one problem is, you know, even though Elon sold a lot of Tesla stock, he's the most ardent believer in Tesla. So when you think about, you know, diamond hands, Elon probably has the biggest diamond hands in the world. So when a billion and a half of stock goes on the open market, typically those people, they might try and flip it. They don't really have any belief in Tesla. And so like these shares find themselves in the hands of people who don't have as much belief as Elon. So these are the types of folks who are willing to panic out of the stock when times get bad. They're the times of folks who might sell Tesla stock if they don't like what the board of directors is doing or what Elon's doing or what Elon's tweeting. So to have these shares not in Elon's hands, I think will be a bit of a drag longer term.
Okay.
And I think it'll take longer to resolve. So when Elon first sold shares, essentially the stock was 333 a share.
Right.
Or actually, I think it's a little higher. It might have been like 1100. So it would have been like around 366 a share.
Right.
And we've never seen that price again. So,
but that you know, come on now, there was so many other factors.
yeah.
Lots of.
So what you need to happen longer term is for more people to come in and understand how much better Tesla's product is,
Right.
what robotaxi might mean compared to what Uber and Lyft are offering today, how much money Tesla Optimus would make for them. You would need those people to come in, but also like have this steadfast conviction around their beliefs and be able to stick through the volatility that Tesla stock has.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I think it was a very good idea to bring it up. I'm not sure what New York Times intent was because they might have had more nefarious intents. But I think it's a very good idea to bring it up.
And we didn't crash the stock.
We didn't crash the stock.
Bulls were complaining last night that
and here it is.
We shouldn't bring up a negative topic like that. But Elon said in a space in late 2022 that he probably wouldn't be selling the stock. He didn't use the word probably, but maybe he said maybe. But he basically said 18 to 24 months, which brings us to now, essentially. And he probably had a more optimistic view of how the Twitter acquisition was going to go at that time.
Right.
So it's probably gone much worse than he thought. So, you know, we'll see where things go from here. Ultimately, what happens when a CEO or C-suite sells a stock is people begin to question if something is wrong
Sure.
with that company.
Right.
So in this whole story that Randy and I have been talking about for the last 10 minutes, there's nothing wrong with Tesla. There's an issue with X, and Elon needs to plug that hole. It doesn't mean X is going to fail. X has a lot of things going for them. It's growing well. Pretty soon, we don't know how soon, they're going to start doing payments.
Right.
That'll make a big difference for them.
And possibly dating services.
Well, okay. And there's been some other expenses that have come, like paying creators, but also, making video a big part of the platform.
Mm-hmm.
You have content hosting and bandwidth costs with that. But they could run ads on videos. They could enable people with spaces to run ads,
Right.
to run audio ads. There's things they could do to bring in more revenue. So like, this is not the end of the story. I don't think X is going to become some endless money pit for Elon. But him needing to add more cash is a very real thing. And the other investors in X are not ignorant to the fact that they're suing advertisers. Revenues may be down 50%. They're not necessarily going to give Elon a great deal on the X valuation.
Yeah. So the final thing I'll throw into the pot is that Elon is so conservative in his financial approach to things. So he's so conservative. So I'm kind of imagining that he would be conservative in this matter as well, and has probably made sure that the company is not losing money. Just because we're not hearing about mass layoffs doesn't mean there haven't been people that have been laid off. It doesn't mean that there hasn't been other cuts. I know they're moving out of the San Francisco facility, right? They're moving to Texas. So that might have been a very large expense in San Francisco compared to what they'll be paying.
Maybe, but they also weren't paying rent for a very long time.
Is that still true that they were somehow able to stay in the building even though they weren't paying rent?
I don't know when it ended. We never got an update on that, but that was
I remember
true thing that came out.
Yes. All right. Let's move on.
I wouldn't want to negotiate against Elon. That sounds pretty tough.
Not him or Trump. I'm not that negotiator.
Yeah.
All right. Number two, I suspect that Tesla has been beaten down the last couple of weeks over nonsense. This subject is part two, kind of what we're talking about, is like, what the heck happened to Tesla today? It was because you brought it up yesterday that Tesla went up 13 points today. But everybody wants to know, up one day 10, down the next day 7, up the next day 3, up the next day 3. I mean, it's just like, holy mackerel, it's just flying all over the place. And I have been looking for news. You know what I do all day? I sit here for 12 hours a day.
You want to explain it, right?
And I want to explain it. And it's like, okay, what in the world is going on? Well, I finally figured it out. Well, I mean, in my own mind.
Okay. Let's hear it.
And that is 3 weeks ago, or I didn't look it up, but roughly 3-4 weeks ago, we were at 260, 250, somewhere around, I forget. But, we were up there and people were like, oh boy, here we go. Nothing has changed since then. Now, the date of the robotaxi rollout changed from 8.8 to 10.10. And that was the beginning of the sell-off. And then we've had a bunch of FUD from all kinds of different directions. For instance, the FUD on Monday about Cybertrucks having trouble selling. It's like, what are you talking about? What a bunch of nonsense. And you and I did a video today about that. So I think that the FUD has done its thing. It's run its course. Tesla has been whipshawed around a bit by all the other nonsense, including Japanese carry trades and all the rest of the macro stuff that's happened over the last couple of weeks. And so I think ultimately the FUD is done and the nonsense is done, and we are fundamentally just where we were a few weeks ago. And the investing public who understands Tesla and is normally bullish on Tesla and wants to be in the stock, they're back to understanding, okay, we're 50 something days away from 1010, and this is a very important time.
Yeah, I think people will at some point be anticipating some kind of stock run into the event, potentially a run higher. We seem to be closer to a day when Cybertrucks are going to have FSD enabled.
Yeah.
Looking like we're also going to get hardware 3 cars to get the newer version of FSD, which is, you know, very smooth and good. So things are looking up with FSD. I'd say some negatives are that while the sales in China were good and that they showed that Tesla could sell far more in China than people think, they're also not selling these cars in Europe for a higher price. So that may hurt margins a little bit, because, you know, Europe enacted these tariffs, and Tesla's trying to get a review to get the tariff lowered for the Model 3s that they send over and sell in Europe. So Tesla needed to sell more cars in China and has done so, and that's a positive, especially like considering the BYD, the comparable BYD is $11,000 less than a Tesla, and the Model Y still does very good there.
Yeah.
So I think there's a bit of a give and a take. The market seems to be reacting well to the employment numbers that came out this morning. Seems like a bit of a delayed reaction to the inflation numbers that came out yesterday. So yeah, it seems like a bit of back and forth. We still seem headed toward a recession.
Well, let's hold that subject for one more second, because I was curious to know if you guys have any kind of a price target around FSD, level 5. I mean, or what do you think the catalyst will be? Let's say we get to 1010, we've got to run up to 1010. The 1010 news is kind of expected. Maybe we get a little pop after, maybe we're down a little after, sell on the news or whatever, but we don't get like an FSD level 5 announcement. We don't get a robotaxi is going to start next Thursday announcement. You know, we just get a kind of a good, solid day, and all of it is in the future, and we're still waiting for those things to happen. Do you have, I'm just going to say, I personally think that when it's announced that you can drive from the back seat, that will be the day. That will be the great come and get it day. And that's when I have my $700 price target.
Mm-hmm.
It might take until robotaxis are actually on the road. And I could make an argument that it'll take until there's some feedback in terms of uptake from those robotaxis that are first out there on the road. That it might take for all 3 of those things to happen before we really see the $700 price point. How do you guys see that?
Yeah, so we look at the value of the business and not concerned about really how the public sees it or whether Wall Street agrees with us. So we look at the value of the business that we see, the potential there, and then we put a valuation on it. And our valuation for like a really good FSD, and I believe this is with robotaxi. So our base case with Tesla does include like a very useful FSD that more people are going to want to have in their cars, to the point where it may be like 50% of the cars that are out there. So that's our base case, and that's it. That's where we did a valuation in early 2023, and basically we thought that could potentially take Tesla to 1,000 a share. But like otherwise margins in their normal auto business have been a little disappointing since we've done that. But on its own, in that report, we said that robotaxi is worth, in our opinion, so not financial advice,
right.
1,100 a share
Okay.
by itself.
At what?
And essentially today, that's what it's
Okay.
worth today,
Okay.
not like in 2030. So in
Okay.
2030, we feel that piece could be worth
A lot.
probably closer to like $2,000 or something like that.
So the $1,100 would, when you say today, do you mean when it's real? Or do you mean today?
I'd say like, yeah, when it's obvious, when it's real, when it's working, when it started, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Because like if it was that good, it would grow very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like there'd be a pretty high degree of certainty with it.
All right. Okay. So my $700 number, which would be just for FSD at level 5, would not be a crazy number to you guys.
No.
Okay.
Now, we don't know when it would get to that number.
Yeah.
But like that would be a valuation we would have in our minds. So like if it started and you could put any Tesla on the robotaxi network, and then Tesla supplemented with their custom built robotaxi,
right.
All that stuff, and the stock ran up and it ran up to $1,100, then then it would be closer to our fair value on that portion of the business.
Okay. All right. Good. That's exactly what I wanted to accomplish in that segment of this episode.
We did it.
We did it. All right. So let's go back to the market as a whole of the general economy. So you said it looks to you or feels to you like we're going into recession, or do you think we're already there? I, of course, have said over and over again, I think it started in June when the auto sales went south at retail. That's been confirmed over and over and over again now that the auto sales started going into really bad spaces in June. And I felt like that was the last shoe to drop. That was the final blow to the economy that threw it into recession. That's my thinking starting in June. And now we've got multiple people today on MSNBC saying they think the economy is slowing down, may or may not go into recession, but it's slowing down. We've got the report out of Walmart saying that their sales are doing great, which is good for Walmart, but it usually portends not that great of things for the economy as people are value shopping. And we had Home Depot, really importantly, saying last week that people are not just putting off buying the spa, people are not. They're deciding, forget the spa for now. It's not even a month or 2 months or until the financing is lower. Is like, okay, never mind. So where do you fit into all that?
Yeah, so I would defer to you and people like Meyer Thacker who have studied this a little more. In 2007, in the third quarter, the GDP was first reported as positive, but revisions to that report later had the GDP as negative. So like from a positive like 1.5 to a negative 2.8 or something like that.
I didn't even remember that.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be that bad, but these things can happen is what I'm saying. Where we think we're still in an expansion, but we're actually in a recession. So I think people should be prepared for it. And I think generally Tesla's pretty strong financially, and they tend to do well in times of crisis. But there's potential for the buyer of Teslas to go on strike a little bit more than they have in the past.
Right. Yeah. So the big hope, I talked about this with Jeff last night. The big hope, and something that I always did with my companies, is the best situation you can possibly be in a rough month or a rough quarter or a rough year is to have new products coming out. And so with Tesla having maybe the biggest new product of all time coming out in October or shortly after that, this might be a really good time for them to really do extremely well in a recession.
Yeah.
Not only with
that's a great point, especially when the product is likely to be a compact or a compact hatchback that costs less than the Model 3.
right.
That would tend to do well in a recession and would tend to grab some people who they might be forced to get a compact car.
Yeah. The other thing that Jeff and I didn't even talk about last night is that their massive energy business, your specialization, is basically recession proof. And so that could end up being something that would give them some pretty good buoyancy in a rough storm. Ooh, did you like that?
Yeah, so and like the expansion in AI data centers isn't suddenly going to stop or slow down,
right?
At least not over the next 2 years. So like the power needs, the growth in solar and wind, that's going to continue.
Right.
That creates more demand for batteries.
Right. Yep. All right. Well, with those encouraging comments. By the way, my other side of my story in terms of the recession starting in June is I think it'll either be 6 months or 9 months long, which is about what you get with most recessions. Most of them are 6 to 9 months long. I think it'll be 6 months if Trump is elected and 9 months if Harris is elected. And this has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with the change of administration. And economies tend to burst out quickly in a change of administration, whereas if Harris is elected, it would be more a case of just the normal recovery from a recession. So that's the difference between the two. Nothing to do with my political persuasion.
And what I'll add to that is small business entrepreneurs tend to vote more on the Republican side, and they tended to do better when Trump was in office, or they tended to do well then. So they might get encouraged if there was a political change, and might get a little bold up or excited and feel encouraged to invest more in their businesses.
All right.
What do you think of that?
I think that's true. I think I think that from what I'm seeing, because Tuesday the NFIB report came out, and the small businesses were they're continuing to be pessimistic. It's called the optimism report. It hasn't been optimistic for 2 years. So these individuals in these small businesses are not doing well. Remember, a lot of them are in manufacturing, or they are servicing manufacturing, or they're supplying manufacturing. Tons and tons of small businesses, one way or the other, are connected to construction, to housing. Just all those have been in recession. They're in transportation. Transportation has been in recession for 2 years. So small businesses have not been doing well in this economy. And they've been battered around by the job problems, the not being able to find employees. I know even the smallest businesses couldn't find employees during the COVID period. And then once they could get employees, they're way more expensive. And they continue to complain about inflation. And yet, we talk about it being solved. It's not solved. This last month, small business people are still saying, no, it's still the number one thing negatively impacting their businesses. So that is where the small business people are that's how they're feeling right now, at least according to the NFIB. So yeah, I think they could be very encouraged with a change in government where they believe there'll be less regulation, maybe other kinds of things that are pro-business. Yeah.
I just gave someone a raise in the last 4 to 5 weeks. So that's, inflation on my costs.
There you go.
As a
That's right.
small business owner.
Yep.
It was well deserved, but still, that's an increase for us.
That's true.
Yep.
All right. Well, I will let you go unless you want to go through the numbers with me. Happy to have you come along.
No, but you can call me sir.
Sir. Yes.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, check out our video that Randy and I did on the Cybertruck and the removal of the $80,000 option from Tesla's website,
Right.
which is supposed to signal bad things to come for the Cybertruck, that
Horrible.
it's being received terribly. So check it out, see what Randy and I think about it.
Okay. Perfect. Great advice. See you later. See you next week.
See you.
All right. Well, let's see where the markets are right now. And we have got Tesla, which was up $12.76 today, is up another 55 cents in the after hours. You got the Dow was up 554, NASDAQ up 401, and the S&P up 88. All of the Mag 7 were up. All of the Cathie Woods were up. Everybody had a very happy day today. And you've already, if you listened to me this morning, you know that I was like, I'm not 100% sure this is a happy day, because let's go ahead and take a look at what happened to those bonds, because the bond market is signaling something entirely different. Let's see, I should be able to get these here. There we go. So the bonds are back up to 3.923 on the 10-year. Now they're a little bit down in the pre-market, down 0.3 basis point, but they were way up. And believe it or not, the 2-year is spreading out again. The inversion is getting larger again. So I'm asking myself, or I'm asking in the investing public out there, what about the numbers today made you believe that the Fed is still going to cut in September? And every pundit I listened to on MSNBC today, no, not them, CNBC. I don't ever listen to MSNBC. On CNBC today, the pundits were saying, oh, no, they're going to cut 50 basis points, and then 50 basis points in December, 25, and then 25 and 25. And no, it's all done. Let me know in the comments below. Do you think that's a done deal based on the bonds going up 10 basis points today? That's not a good sign that they think that's what's going to happen, because if the economy is great, then why would the Fed cut? If there's not a job problem, why would they cut? They're not down to 2%. They're not even down to 2.5%. Why would they cut? I'm still trying to figure this out. I'll keep looking. I'll keep digging. I'll keep analyzing, and I'll let you know what I'm coming up with. All right, so that's what's happening with bonds. Let's go ahead and look at oil. I was looking a minute ago. Let's see if it's still true. We have got oil down 22 for the patch, for the local, for Texas. We have got Brent unchanged, but up to 81. Okay, that's still $3. Okay, no. Earlier it was out of balance a little more. Natural gas continuing to go up, now at almost 20 cents, $2.20. So that's quite a nice run for natural gas going into the fall. This is not the normal time for natural gas to be doing well. Maybe I'll do a little digging there, see what's going on. Gold is at 2,494. Looking at 240 up in the pre-market, looking towards going back into that record territory above 2,500. Silver up slightly, 0.06 at $28.43. And copper down finally, down 0.28 at $4.14. The dollar down against the yen, up against the euro. That's the opposite of what it's been the last couple of days. But all of it right now, really, really tiny amounts. Bitcoin down 1,292, back down to 57.6. Whoa. Okay, there you go. I don't even attempt, unless I've heard some headline, to tell you what I think is happening with crypto. I just know that's really low. All right, we have got the futures for tomorrow on the equities. Dow up 64 or 0.16. S&P up 925 or 0.17. And the NASDAQ doing better than the other two, up 47.75 or 0.24. So in general, continuing positivity in the pre-market. We'll see if it carries through to tomorrow. And then, of course, my feeling is that Tesla, well, what is my feeling about Tesla? It could go down 7 tomorrow and we'd still be up 6 over the 2 days. I mean, it's just, yeah, I gave you my analysis. Overall, I haven't put any numbers on it yet, but I think overall for the next, whatever it is, 7 weeks, we're going to see kind of a continuous movement towards 1010 until probably 260, 265. This is what I said before, those kind of numbers. Now, the thing that'll change that is if FSD gets really, really, really good. If we're seeing reports where there's just no interventions, no safety interventions and maybe a few minor interventions, something like that, where people are going, okay, that could absolutely get us into higher numbers than 265 prior to the meeting. All right, let's see what else I got to tell you. I got to tell you to go right there to the card, and that is going to take you to my video earlier today with Cern Basher. It was outstanding. Of course, it always outstanding. Everybody loves Cern. He gets such great comments. So go take a look at Cern's video. We talked a lot about Cybertruck. We talked a lot about other aspects of Tesla and also the economy. And I think you'll find it entertaining as well as useful in your analysis. Okay, and then there is this thing called Patreon. You could go down there. You could just go to the description. You could check it out. You could send me $3 a month. It would be so lovely. That's all I got. Been great talking to you.